Hey guys, Robert Mitchell here. So this is a conversation I had with Vinny Raposa at Team Raposa Martial Arts. He is a Taekwondo master, and in his team he has boxing coaches and capoeira and a bunch of stuff at his school that's really cool. He had some questions about Frontier Rough and Tumble, so I tried to answer them. And during the course of the conversation, I rambled, I dominated the conversation, I probably bragged a little bit, and I probably didn't comport myself very well. But be that as it may, Vinny did. He was very humble, and I didn't let him get a word in edgewise. But I'm not one of these people that tries to make themselves look perfect and doesn't own up to their mistakes. So I didn't handle the car very well. But I hope we're able to do a second call. We didn't get to everything because we ran out of time. But anyway, here's the conversation I had with Vinny Raposa at Team Raposa Martial Arts in Newark, New Jersey. And I hope you enjoy listening to us talk. Thanks. Here you go.
Sure.
I just hit recording. Okay, we're recording. So,
Awesome.
Vinny Raposa,
Yep.
welcome
That's
to my
me.
YouTube channel. I'm glad to have you on. Why don't you go ahead, Vinny, and tell us a little bit about you, about your school and what you do.
Sure. So the name of our school is Team Raposa. We're headquartered in Newark, New Jersey. We've been there this is our 7th year. We started with Olympic Taekwondo. And eventually, because we had the Olympic system, the Olympic style of Taekwondo, it was always my passion to compete. I had the idea of, hey, how about we get a couple more Olympic sports in here? I think it'd be great. So I got introduced indirectly to our current boxing coach. So the gentleman who's running our boxing program, Willie Moses, he is very much community minded, and he's a little older than I am, so he's been through the whole competition world himself, and now he's just a coach and a developer of youth. So he liked our idea of taking inner city kids and just building them up and having them become their own heroes, right? This is the goal of the martial arts schools. So build
Right.
up the self-confidence, build up the leadership, and make it so that rather than looking up to these superstar celebrities that are out on TV and I guess YouTube now and Spotify podcasts and all of that, the celebrity world, you can build up your own little circle of celebrity within your own community, and then develop your own value, develop your own character through competition, which I think is very important. We don't want to abandon traditional artistic forms and self-defense, which is the primary focus of all martial arts. But I do believe that competition is important because the value of that medal, especially to an inner city kid, is much larger than a kid that's in 10,000 activities, and this is just another one of them. So that's when we expanded to boxing about 4 years ago and developed a competitive boxing program as well. As we progressed, we just met more people. Some folks, the community where we have our primary school in Newark, there's a very large immigrant community there with a big chunk being Brazilians. I'm Brazilian, born in Brazil, moved here when I was a kid. And there was a coach and an athlete that moved over from Brazil, had retired from sport themselves and decided to come into our community. We were talking and they came in and joined our team and started developing our competition team in the Taekwondo. And then the boxing started to grow in parallel. And now we have also a karate instructor with Shotokan, traditional. We have capoeira, the capoeira instructor who I trained under for a couple years. He jumped on just the end of last year. Within our building, we've made a partnership with a ballet studio who's subletting one of our rooms. So they have ballet. We have a new program that was just developed in January called Fight for Film, in which we have stunt actors that are teaching folks from the ground floor how to be stunt actors and performers. So how to strike for movies and take the strike, and how to realize where the cameras are, the proper camera angles. So I need to move my head this way, how to fall, roll, all that stuff. So we just started that. It's a new thing. We
That
just
seems to be
developed on
pretty
the weekends.
popular. I've seen several people teaching that. I've seen seminars popping up on that.
Yeah. It's definitely, stage combat is popular. Definitely, I would say taking from the ground floor is where this program is a little unique. Taking folks that have no acting or experience in anything and teaching them the stunt world, which is different from the acting world.
Right.
Yeah. So that's where we are now.
So when did you get into the martial arts? How long have you been into martial arts?
22 years now, I guess. I think it's about 22 years now. Yeah. So I started, of course, in Taekwondo. My original instructor, Master Isaac, he was all about self-defense. He's a traditional guy, He was, he came from the old Soviet Union. So he's from modern day Latvia, but he came in the early 70s, still the Soviet Union. And he came from a military background, a military lineage, his father, grandfather. But he didn't like communism, right? He had a hard time accepting that you need to apply to get another car or to move to another apartment in another town or whatever it may be. So he came over as a refugee. Now I don't remember. He did tell me how. There was this. He's Jewish, and an Orthodox Jew, and I believe there was an agreement between the United States and Israel at that time for any Jewish individual that wanted to leave the Soviet Union, because of his military background. It was easier for him to participate in that program. Yeah. So then he came here and found Taekwondo. And, so he combined that with, of course, all of his military training, his military background. And his Taekwondo was very much different from the modern sport Taekwondo. It's very much focused on building up your physical strength, building up your physical endurance to take impact. And he loved board breaking, concrete, all that stuff, like the old timers, some of the old timers did. And self-defense. I mean, every single day. It was every single class. The last 15, 20 minutes was dedicated to self-defense. So that was my foundation with him.
Now, a lot of those old guys like the old ITF Taekwondo, and so there were obviously many competing schools of Taekwondo back in those days. So when I started Taekwondo in '86, and when I started, my instructor, Master Dong here in Richmond, who now teaches the Olympic style Taekwondo, but back in those days, he had changed the forms already. He just changed the forms to the ITF forms. But before that, he had actually called it Dong Sudo. And then he changed it to Taekwondo and went to the ITF forms. And then I was there right after I got my black belt. He switched and went to WTF forms and went the Olympic Taekwondo route. So those guys, I mean, if you asked him, he was like, it's Korean karate. It's all the same.
Yeah.
And I would just go, what do you mean it's all the same? It just drove me nuts. But those guys thought differently than we think. And they knew that they were going to make it work one way or the other. He had also been a boxing coach for some police team in South Korea or something. And so we would say, these don't look like, why are we punching like this in our forms, but when we're out here, we're holding our hands up like boxers. He was like, don't worry about it,
Yeah. No, so it's interesting, how to transition from the whole, here and here, to explain that, when you're doing this, you're isolating the motion so that it works when you're here. Kids don't realize it when they're doing it. They're like, why am I doing this? I'm never going to fight like this, But, it's like I was actually explaining this last week to our adult students. It's like bench pressing, right? When you bench press, you're isolating the pec. rather
Yes.
than using the dumbbells. If you do the dumbbell press, now you're working on balance, you're activating different muscles. When you're using the bench press, you're isolating that. And here you're isolating the motion so that when you have to use it, it's more efficient. It's just a different philosophy, right? Boxers don't think like that. Boxers train like they fight the whole time. So
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Well, everybody, the thing is that when I think back, and at the basics that I got from that Taekwondo, it it was so important. There's a tendency to give up on the forms nowadays, but I still think that forms have value. And so in the Cabal Fang program that I have, we have limited forms. We really only have 3 forms that we do, and it's really utilized for beginners to get those body mechanics in place. And the 3 forms are basically, the first form has 8 basic self-defense movements in it that we use from a lot of different angles. And so we have like top wrist lock, double wrist lock, and a couple of 8 on a combat clock, basically. And we would call it a form, but it's really a combat clock of movements that we learn to practice so we can use them either standing or on the mat. And they all have double uses. So they can all be used standing, or they can be used prone. And then we have another form, which is all chokes. And it's all garment chokes. It's all 6 useful garment chokes that you can use, again, standing or prone. And then the last one is the form that has all the basic simple self-defense moves, that like about 20, that you want every person to just kind of build so you can practice it every day and just have those basic self-defense moves built in, such as that are good in the clinch, like drop duck under and valley roll and all the things that you would use to get out of the most common headlocks and the most common tie-ups. And that's all we really have for forms, in the Cabal Fang system. And of course, in the Bobcat system, we don't have any forms because it's Western martial arts and there just aren't any. But thanks for the introduction. So I should guess most people probably already know what I do on the channel, but I'll just give everybody the quick rundown. I am an author, I am a martial artist, and I am a seminarian. I am a transitional deacon in the independent Catholic tradition in pursuit of holy orders of the priesthood. I will continue to do that until such time as the 2 things run into each other. And when they do run into each other, the martial arts will probably have to pass away. But for the time being, I don't see any conflict, and I'm moving forward without any trouble. I've got 2 programs. I have the Cabal Fang nonprofit program, which is for anybody who wants to show up here in Richmond, Virginia. And then I have the online program that is the Bobcat Frontier Martial Arts program. So you had a number of questions. You had reached out to me online about specifically Lacan Vinny, cane fighting. And then you had some questions about the Bobcat program and where it comes from and how I learned this stuff and so forth. So I'm just going to let you pepper me with questions about cane fighting and Bobcat martial arts.
Yes, it's interesting, when you're in the martial arts world and you've been in the martial arts for some time, and you've studied your system, it's a never-ending thing, right? But it's inevitable that your interest starts to peak in other realms, right?
Yeah.
So about 6 years ago, was it 6? I don't remember, maybe 8 years ago now, I wanted to learn something that was Brazilian, right? So I was practicing capoeira for a couple of years. So something that's not just the traditional Asian martial arts that I've always,
right.
So capoeira, of course, my cultural heritage, right? I'm Brazilian, so I practiced a couple of years. But I wanted to find what else was out there. Of course, there was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I found this self-defense system called Combato, Kombato, Combato, which was developed in Rio. Yeah, so if you're familiar with it, it was developed in Rio for initially I guess that would be the equivalent to the Marines here, the naval officers, for the Naval Academy in Rio, and then to the military police, because the policing is different from here. You know, in the U.S., you have the police pretty much do everything that involves policing, right? In Brazil, you have a separation of civil and enforcement. Enforcement is run by the military police, and the civil police can't even write a ticket barely, you know? So you can't arrest the civil police, but the military police do all of the enforcement. So this combate was developed for the military police. And
Right.
of course, you know, went back to Brazil, months and months, studied that anyway. The reason I'm saying that is it just falls in line with this progression that got me to you. And I started to, to research a little further back right into my cultural heritage, right? Brazilian. So I started looking at medieval Portugal and, you know, rapier and the stick, jogo do pau and all of that.
Yeah, yeah.
I started playing around with that. And, you know, I practiced the Kali sticks. This is, you know, most martial artists here in the New York, New Jersey, tri-state area, if you've picked up a stick, it's Kali that you've practiced, you know? And then I came to find out that Le Can de Combat exists from France. And I said, wow, and this is recent, you know, just beginning of this year. And I said, wow, look at that. So Europe has a dedicated stick combat system. So, you know, so let's explore that. And you know, and I met you and, you know, we're meeting virtually now via video. We met via text and email earlier. And I just thought that was so interesting. And then you showed me these other programs that you have, the Frontier Rough and Tumble, sent me that article.
That's
Long.
fun, right?
Oh my God, it was what, 45 pages? I couldn't put it down. I read through the whole thing. I thought that was so interesting. I never knew that here in the United States, you know, there were these see, if I say the word indigenous, you immediately think, tribal, right? But indigenous in that, you know, you have homebred martial arts systems developed by the folks that, you know, the ones that eventually became, the United States ancestors to the modern United States people. It's just so interesting. I never knew this existed, and you know, it really piqued my interest. So I'd love to know a little more about the rough and tumble, about the Bowie knife, and whatever else is traditionally North American.
Well, so what got me started is I've always been interested in Western style martial arts to some extent, but once the mixed martial arts explosion hit, I had to explore beyond Taekwondo, because let's face it, if you were in the 90s, you had to watch MMA. If you weren't watching the early days of UFC, I mean, it just took over everybody's oxygen. It was what everybody watched. And so I'm watching it, and I'm watching no Taekwondo guys win, right? But guys that were winning were guys that were doing Savate, guys that were doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so I was like, well, these are all Western martial artists. You know, there's boxers, there's wrestlers, there's saboteurs, there's kickboxers, and there's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's it, you know. So I wanted to explore all those things, and there was nobody teaching Savate here in Richmond. So I discovered the Maryland Savate Club, which is like a 2-hour drive away. So I just reached out to them and I was like, hey, can I come up here? So I went up to the Maryland Savate Club and trained a few times. Well, lo and behold, they had a seminar with Gerard de Bruyne. Master de Bruyne is a former Le Can world champion or whatever, a French champion. And I was like, really? So how much does a seminar cost? It was insanely cheap. I was like, okay. So I go, and I got to tell you, I have trained with a lot of really impressive people over the years. I have trained with Bill Superfoot Wallace. I have trained with Joe Lewis. I have trained with Henzo Gracie. I mean, I've trained with a lot of really talented people. And I'm going to tell you, Gerard de Bruyne will blow you away with what he can do with a stick. First of all, he's got like a 4-foot vertical leap. I don't know anybody. I mean, he can just boing up in the air and then spin the stick around and hit you with it. Well, bear in mind, he's doing the sportive version where it doesn't have a head on the cane. So it's basically light touch. Still and so, this guy can go front stance, back stance, leap to the side, like the capoeira guys do that know what they're doing, right? And I was smashed. My head just. So I asked him about cane, and so he presented me, or everybody in the seminar, with a walking stick. And it's a traditional Western walking stick with a round knob on the end, and it's engraved. Gerard Debreu, Stage International, blah, blah, blah. Thanks for attending the seminar or whatever. And I'm like, are you kidding? He was like, no. That's where this stuff comes from. It comes from Le Can Vinny. Well, what's that? So anyway, we had a conversation. He left, he went back to France, and I started looking online. Well, it turns out there's a guy in Australia named Craig Geminier who has a series of DVDs you can buy with the basics of it. And I bought the DVD set. This was many, many, many years ago. And I started training with it, and I started practicing it. And the essence of Lacan is the high guard. So your arm is up to the side, your fighting foot is forward, right hand, right foot if you're right-handed, and the stick is held way high and it comes down at an angle so that the knob lines up roughly with your forehead between you and the opponent. And what's really cool about that high guard is that when the attacks come from this direction, you just drop the point. When they come from this direction, you drop the point. If it comes straight down, you lift the point. And if it's attacks at the leg, you do the same thing. You just bend your knees. And you can defend this whole upside down U by moving virtually not at all. It's the coolest thing ever. Also, the stick is longer than a short stick, and it has a knob on the end of it. And so between those two things, once you get that wrist action to where you can strike quickly with the stick without wrist discomfort, and you build your way up slowly, then it's done. I mean, so just as an example, I did a seminar. I had a guy come out, and I haven't done a seminar in 2 years just because of COVID, but I'll probably do another one as soon as COVID lifts. But I did this seminar, and I had this guy come out. He's been doing classic Japanese sword with the rattan. Yeah. And he was like, there's no way that works against this. And I was like, bro, your hands are low. You have to wind up to hit. I'm going to hit you 5 times before you can raise the stick to hit me. No, it won't. I was like, okay. So we get out there, and I just started eating him up with the stick. And I was like, man, that's designed to be used with 2 guys holding double-handed stick and low guard. It's not the same thing. It's apples to oranges. It won't work. We would be like a boxer having to fight taekwondo rules. Like, there's a rule set that determines the outcome here, right? So right. Even though the 2 sticks are roughly the same length, it's not just about that. It's about what you're supposed to be doing and how the 2 things nest, right? So, but still, and so, I think that high guard is what makes it so devastating. Now, what's really cool about it is that you can use a heavier stick, but you have to what's called charger. So in other words, if you have a light stick, you can just spin it from where it's located quickly because it's light and it's just a knobbed cane. But let's say that you had to use an axe handle. Well, you can charger by bringing it behind your head, and then you can whack, and that's gonna give you the ability to get the same maneuver off. And I can describe this to you, and it probably makes a little bit of sense, but we'd have to kind of be standing in the same space to show you. The other thing I did was I took a seminar from Dr. Mon Guy. Are you familiar with Dr. Mon Guy?
No.
All right, so Dr. Mon Guy is a highly controversial figure. He's not teaching anymore. He's now a Buddhist monk. but he was a general in the Burmese army. And so people don't like him because of his involvement with being a general in the highly oppressive Burmese army.
Mm.
He emigrated to the United States and became a martial arts instructor in Ohio. And he made a lot of absurd claims about having been a CIA operative during the Vietnam War or something. And
Right.
so his reputation became somewhat tarnished. But I'm going to tell you, I took a seminar from Dr. Mon Yi, and he starts the stick fighting seminar by putting up posters on the walls and magazine articles and newspaper clippings from Asia about people getting killed with sticks with very graphic depictions.
Oh no.
And I'm telling you, you ought to have the guy come after you with a 20-pound cudgel.
Mm.
So I took a 90-minute seminar from him, and it started off with like 30 people in it, and there were only 10 people left at the end because people were walking out of the seminar. I mean, he was screaming like, "This is a war, not a wedding." I mean, that
Oh my
guy,
God.
dude, this guy was intense. So I kid you not, he broke 2 Kali sticks in that seminar.
Really? Those are not easy to break.
You brought your own sticks to the seminar, and you had to defend yourself against him and that stupid cudgel. And he had a variety of cudgels of various sizes. And so, true story, I was in line. He had a line of guys lined up, and he would come up to the front of the line. He would tell you how to defend yourself, and then he would attack you with that flipping stick. So he hands off the baton to the other guy in front of me, and he points at me and does like this. He goes, "You hit him right here. And if he doesn't block and you don't hit him, you get kicked out, no refund." So you know the guy comes at me with like bloody murder. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it was really intense. And so going through that and then learning the stick stuff from Jeminier and going to the seminar with DeBrule really got me into thinking with a really kind of sparring oriented method. So from there, we put it into my Cabal Fan Club. We got lacrosse gear and lacrosse gloves. And we took the knobs off. We used realistic weighted canes. And we pretty much just sparred full contact with those. And that was a lot of fun, and nobody really got hurt much. My son did get a busted thumb. How he busted his thumb through a lacrosse glove is a mystery. But once my son's now moved to Japan. He's an IT guy. He's moved to Japan. He's in Osaka now. There's really isn't anybody left that loves it besides me.
How fun for a martial artist.
I know, right? Yeah.
Oh my
I
goodness.
don't know what he's going to do. He's talking about getting into judo. My son loves
Man, come
grappling.
on. You're in the best place for it.
I know,
Is
right?
he gonna watch the Olympics? Did he get tickets to the Olympics?
No, he didn't get tickets to the
Ah,
Olympics. Yeah, my son's been doing martial arts with me since he was 15, a variety of different martial arts, and he got his varsity letter in wrestling in high school. And I always tell people I want to be just like my son when I grow up.
ah. Oh,
He's a
high
tough
school
kid.
wrestling is no joke. High school and
Yeah,
college wrestling. Oh my goodness, it's no joke. They
yeah,
really go at it. Yeah, it's
yeah.
great.
My son's a monster. So anyway, that's what got me into it. And so now what I've done is anybody who's interested in cane, if they want to do cane with me now, I just use the Century padded weaponry and face shields, and we don't go at it with that hard. And then I just encourage people to use a realistic weighted cane for their personal practice, to hit heavy bags with it, to get out there with a knobbed cane and really spin it, and then spend some time sparring so that you get your instincts straight and you can block properly, and then you can come back with those double hits. The little module that you got from me, which I appreciate your business, there are some video links in that to show some of the basic spins and how to basically do that. And what you would need to do is you just need to get out and hit a heavy bag. You just need to hang up a heavy bag, get a good quality cane, And I'd like to start selling some if I can find some. I don't have the time to make my own, but I do make my own canes. I just carved my own, and I like to use mulberry wood for the canes. It's the closest thing you can get here in America to probably something like a rattan. It's got natural latex in the wood. It's extremely springy and doesn't
We
like.
can get rattan. You can get rattan canes here.
Yeah, but can you get one? You can get rattan
With the curve though, with
yeah,
the
but you need to
no,
get
you can
them.
get it. You can get a cane with the crook at the end. I haven't. I actually have one in my car. I have a few at the school with the curved end. I can send them to you if you'd like.
Oh
With the
no,
curved end, but not with the knob though. Like
yeah,
you
you need
know,
a knob.
Lacan. Yeah, you need the knob,
Yeah,
right?
you need a knob if you're gonna do Lacan Vinny. You need a knob because that's
Mm.
the money. That's the money shot. Um,
Right.
you know,
It's
and
like
I
a
get hit with,
mace.
I'm telling you. I mean, look, I always tell people if you've been hit with a rattan stick, okay, either by accident doing a colleague class, it lights you up.
Oh yeah.
Okay, it's an electric shock. You might as well stick your finger in the outlet. Okay, but if you get hit with the knob of that cane, you're going to the hospital.
Oh,
It's
I'm
a
sure.
other thing. It's not the same. So you can put your Kali
Right.
stick on a mailing scale, and that's what I use to calibrate my walking sticks when I make my own walking sticks. So, I know I want about a 9 or 10 ounce cane, and I want it to be thinner at the handle, and then I want the weight to be about a third from the head, the balance point about a third of the way from the head. And you can lay your Kali stick there, and you can say, yeah, man, this thing's heavier. It's got that big knob on it.
Yeah. Makes a big difference.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. So I mean, anyway, but it's super fun, and I feel like if it's Western martial arts you're interested in and you want to train with a weapon, the other thing cool is that you can't go to the airport and get on a flight carrying your Kali stick. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But you can get on the plane carrying your cane.
Right.
And if you're an old guy like me, I'm going to be 60 in June. As many training issues as I have, training injuries and stuff as I've had, I might be needing a cane before long. So I might be legit carrying the thing.
And that's what's interesting. When you get to the point where you need a cane, where you're nowhere there, you're young and healthy. You say you're 60. It's hard to believe. You're young, strong, and healthy.
Well, thank you.
But when you get to the point where you need a cane, and you use it as a tool to help you walk, it's you almost become a target at that point. But once you learn how to use it, now you actually have a tool in which you can defend yourself with. It's something that sets you apart now once you learn how to use it. So it's definitely highly recommended for anybody that has mobility issues and needs the cane or would walk better with the cane, because not everybody is that to the point where you're limping all the way. Take some lessons, Lacan or any other stick that you can to become proficient with that cane, so that if you are attacked, you can do better.
Yeah, I got to tell you.
Because nothing is guaranteed, my friend. You know that. So even if you're,
Now,
top tier, nothing's guaranteed if you're attacked. Yeah.
I like to walk, and when I go for a walk, I can't walk around town carrying, a 17-inch Bowie knife, right? So if I want to go for a walk, I carry my cane a lot of times. I'll just go for a walk with my cane, and and I got to tell you, I'm not really worried about getting attacked by people. You know what scares the tarnation out of me? I have been attacked 5 times by dogs.
Oh wow!
Now,
oh wow!
It's not like I'm in a third world country. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I was bit on the thigh by a chow a few years back, and I'm a nice guy and I love dogs. My wife and I are dog people. I got 2 dogs downstairs, and I always let the dogs get too close. You know what I mean? I made up my mind after that chow. I'm like, you know what? I love dogs, but if that dog comes running up to me and there's no owner with it,
Yeah.
it's going to get hit. I hate to do it because I just love animals.
Of course.
But once you get bit a few times, you start to get, and then nowadays, all these bully dog breeds, look, I'm not prejudiced against various dog breeds necessarily, but you got to be more concerned when a pit or a German Shepherd runs up to you than than if you get a poodle. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
sure. Oh, man, those things will tear somebody up. Yeah.
No question. So anyway, yeah, so I like the cane against dogs. Like, I just want to have something there that I can hit that thing and let it know that, I might not have teeth, but at least I'm not food.
Right.
So you asked about, when we were talking about email, you asked a little bit about, where the frontier stuff comes from. So I'd sent you a link to an article.
That is interesting.
I'm going to pan up and just show you my life. So this is my life, Vinny. I read a lot. Okay.
Great.
I don't. This is my Wild West library here, the Time Life Library of the West. So yeah, I do a lot of reading and I do a lot of studying, and you have to kind of. So here's a great example. So frontier martial arts is the loose definition the definition I use is it's the life ways, fighting methods, and of indigenous people and colonists from roughly 1600 to 1900. So it's that 300-year period.
So you combine indigenous with
right, because
colonists.
There's an exchange going on. So remember that there was very little horsemanship by native. There was some horsemanship, but it was very limited prior to colonist contact, and no guns.
Is that right? Really?
Yeah.
So what about the Comanche who dominated with horses?
Well, let me tell you what. They're smart, okay? So it didn't take them long to take what we knew and to capitalize on it. And so you had some of the greatest horsemen and some of the greatest shooters the world has ever known in a very, very short period of time. Now, bear in mind, they had no steel. So there was no steel.
Right.
But you think that they didn't get their hands, they wanted to trade in steel as quickly as they could get it. And as soon as they could get it, well, the indigenous people of Virginia had a word for a stone club, and that was tomahawk, which became tomahawk. And as soon as they could get their hands on steel, you think they didn't use it? Well, they became famous for it. So one of the things that I've done is that I'm trying to participate in the Powhatan, the Virginia Algonquian language reconstruction project. The language really hasn't been spoken much after 1800. It basically is extinct. And so a bunch of guys like Blair Roods and Frank Siebert and a bunch of other guys basically reconstructed the language, and there's people trying to bring it back. And so I have a couple of books here. This is the Siebert book here and a bunch of other books. And so you read the historical accounts of Richard Strachey and Captain John Smith and other people that were alive in those days. And so you begin to read things about how they fought and how they behaved. So one of the things I thought, so how do you get martial arts knowledge out of books written by people who aren't knowledgeable about martial arts and who didn't really specifically observe things? So here's one example. I'll give you one example. So I'm reading in this book here, which is this is Helen Roundtree's book, The Powhatan Indians of Virginia. And Helen Roundtree's probably the foremost expert in Virginia Indians, right? So she's collating information about various historians. So it's a recorded thing that the mothers were instrumental in bringing up their boys with the martial outlook. And so what they would do is they would make a little feather ball, very much like an old-fashioned badminton shuttlecock, okay? Weight with feathers on it. And then first thing in the morning, the boy gets up and she takes that thing and she throws it up in the air. And he has to shoot an arrow and hit that target. And if he doesn't hit the target, he doesn't get breakfast.
Oh, I love it.
Now, how about that? Isn't that
Right?
interesting?
Yeah.
So, you know, as soon as I read that, it's been about a year ago. As soon as I read that, I said, well, what am I going to do about that? Because now that I've read that, like I can't get that out of my head. Like that became like a grain of sand that's going to become a pearl in my oyster. You know what I mean?
Sure, absolutely.
So I made a personal rule. If I don't train, I don't eat. If I don't train in the morning, I've been training in the early morning for years and years and years. This morning, I was really tired. I was really sore. And I got up and I was like, I don't feel like training. And I'm like, man, if I don't train, I don't eat. You know?
Yeah,
And it's an
it's cool.
it's an inducement. Like it's like, so those are simple things that's just one simple thing. But if you actually try to step into what you learn, I feel like we tend to kind of want to draw things apart. So modern martial artists, we draw things apart and we put this little box, you know. And so I was talking to Mark Hatmaker at Western Warrior Boot Camp a while back, and we didn't have a Western Warrior Boot Camp last year because COVID, but hopefully we'll have another one soon. But I was talking to him and I was like, man, you see these guys dressed in their tactical gear and they're wearing camo, you know, and they're all about the tactical stuff. And then you can see them standing around looking at their cell phones, texting on their cell phones.
Yeah.
And you're like, dude, you're not aware of your surroundings.
Right.
You're not engaged with your environment. You know, your weapon is your head. So I'm not suggesting that you be paranoid and be switched on all the time. But, you know, and that ties into like nature observation and just being a whole person. Like you should be awake and interacting with the people around you and paying attention, you know.
Situational awareness.
Yeah, yeah. And not like in some hyper vigilant, stressful way, but just like being engaged with the world. Like the world's not in, there's nothing in here, bro.
Right.
Like that won't wait. Like get out of the phone and engage with your surroundings and be present in that. And it's no wonder that mindfulness is a big thing in the culture because there is no mindfulness. You know,
it's like
we
a defrag, you know.
Yeah. So
Mitch, let me ask
go
you.
ahead.
Sorry to interrupt.
No.
Are there? I'm curious. You know, as you're going through, you know, with the tomahawk, you mentioning the base there of where the tomahawk came and all these things and rough and tumble. Are there any living traditions that are continuous, pre-colonial? Any Native American, any indigenous combat systems that are living traditions that have continued throughout time that you know of, similar to
not that I know of. Not that I know of.
So is everything that we may practice now is Reconstruction from literature?
Well, you know, that's rigid. I would say this: human beings do things that work. Things get traded, and things move through. So here's a great example. So, all right. So in Britain, they still do competitions, purring competitions. And it was a competition event for years and years and years, and it's called purring. So this is a competition where guys will lock up in collar and elbow position. So one man's got his hand behind the other man's neck, collar and elbow tie up, right? And what they do is they take the inner edge of their shoe and they drive it into the shin of their opponent. It's called purring.
Okay.
And the first man to say uncle loses the match. It's just like the same foot maneuver you would do, a forward sweep, as if you were in a baseball game and you're trying to kick dirt on your opponent. You just sling your foot forward, inner edge of shoe into shin, right? So that becomes a sport, but that's a martial technique used by guys in the clinch. Have you ever done purring in any of your, is it allowed in Taekwondo competition? I don't think so. I don't
Not
think
an
you can
Olympic,
kick,
no way.
right, you can't kick below the knee. But I'm here to tell you, in Savate, they purr, and it's not funny. It hurts.
Oh,
Especially if you're not using a Savate shoe. If you're using a real shoe, it stinks, okay?
Oh, yeah. Getting kicked in the shin? Absolutely.
It's awful. And it should be basic self-defense 101 Western martial arts is purring. Right there, purring. So that exists, and it's gone all the way around. And so if you think that the guys, when that was done at the local fairs and so forth as a part of the Lancashire wrestling tradition in the 16 and 1700s. Well, those guys came over from Scotland and Ireland to the United States in droves. And so if you think that they weren't purring when they fought here in the U.S. as part of rough and tumble fights, then you're kidding yourself. They were certainly purring.
Right.
So that exists. So that's something that's real. And so it's not really, it's sort of a reconstruction, but you can still go to country fairs in England today and see guys purring as a form of toughness, putting their toughness and their pain tolerance on display, but it's still there. So
Very
another example is grip. So like just simple grip stuff, that comes from, so like lumberjack traditions, how to properly hold tools. So that all goes into farming, farm implements, how to properly use tools. And so nobody swings a tomahawk anymore, right? Nobody fights the tomahawk anymore. But if you talk to Mark Hatmaker, he'll tell you, well, you have to talk to guys that work with tools in the Western tradition and see how tools are handled. And you learn about proper grip and tool manipulation. And so like, for example, in Le Canvigny, then you have the short section of the stick here that's left. And so they call that le talon, right? The tooth. It's the tooth. So what's that for? How much do you leave at that position? How do you change that distance and use that to your advantage? Well, it turns out with tomahawk, then when you pull the tomahawk out, how much do you have below the hand? Where does that go? People who know how to use tools learn to figure out how to control that distance, what to use that talon for, how to manipulate it, and then how to use it to escape. So in the module that you got from me, there's a section in there that you'll see my buddy Scott and I show you how to manipulate that talon upward and press it down against the top of the wrist if someone tries to grab the stick in the center, how to twist it around and pull that talon up. Well, you can do the same thing with the tomahawk. You can use it to rack, and you can use that tomahawk portion to reach up and get a hand off of you or what have you. So you kind of have to say it, maybe it wasn't, just because it wasn't continuous doesn't mean that somebody didn't move it over here and then it got carried over and you can't pick that up again. It's like a vein of gold that goes beneath the surface and winds around and you have to kind of find it. That's what the books are for.
Now, Mitch, I would love to know the proper technique in rough and tumble for popping an eye out. Because that was wild, man. That was wild.
Isn't that funny? Yeah, and you can
Jeez.
read it. And so, Davy Crockett didn't like to be called Davy Crockett. He preferred to be called David. Davy is it's just like Theodore Roosevelt didn't like to be called Teddy. He didn't like to be called Davy Crockett. But he got in a few rough and tumble scraps, and he was known to be a pretty good scrapper. But he never admitted to gouging out an eye, I don't think. But I think he made an offhand comment about how common it was to get an eye gouged out in a rough and tumble scrape.
Crazy.
So, I don't think that one's quite been preserved. But when I got into it and I read that Virginia, my own home state, was a hotbed for that sort of behavior, I went, man,
Wow.
we were really a rough crowd down here in Virginia, weren't we?
Crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys in that article you sent me, they were talking about biting off noses, biting off ears, and then punching into the hole in it. My goodness, popping eyes out all over the place. Jeez.
Yeah, and that's no
Wild
wonder they
stuff.
made laws against it.
Oh yeah, and this is down in the original colonies, but south of us, right? South of Jersey. This is yeah.
Well, I would say that if there's ever if there's another rough and tumble boot camp in August of right before the pandemic hit, the previous summer, they had a rough and tumble boot camp out in Tennessee. And I went down there and I had the joy of training one-on-one with some really great instructors. It was primarily Mark Hatmaker teaching Western martial arts, combatives and associated stuff, rough and tumble. And John Miller, who is a Sambo instructor. And he trained under Gokor Chivchayan. I think that's how you pronounce the name, the MMA guy. And it was 2 full days of great, and they're all instructors. I mean, you go in there and it's not like, there's people who aren't instructors there, but there were a lot of guys there who were instructors who just wanted to train and do this stuff. And I got to tell you, and I know people don't believe me when I tell them, because Mark Hatmaker, he doesn't have a lot of ribbons or titles or anything like that. And, he just seems like a guy. But if you go train with them, again, I can tell you, I've had Henzo Gracie's hands on me. I've had a lot of hands put on me that scared me, frankly, the who's it's out of me. But I can just tell when Mark Hatmaker grabs you, it's not the same.
Mitch, I think we should leave rough and tumble. I think that's a whole other conversation that I'm super interested in. I think we should have a part 2, buddy. What do you think?
I think so. Now, I would say that if you want to talk about the rough and tumble program, I start most people off with the basic self-defense stuff. I start off with basic self-defense, situational awareness, all that basic stuff, which you probably already know. And then I go into movement. So I think movement is important. So I get into climbing, vaulting, crawling, and that sort of thing, because I think it's important to be able to master the basic movements that are required for self-defense, for escape, and then command of your body in space, right? And then I have basic fitness. And so you need to be able to do the basic fitness movements, and it's all very practical. So it's what Hatmaker calls Kansas burpees, smearing push-ups, drop duck unders, and all the stuff that's involved. And then the basics of making sure that your hand's in the right position and all that stuff, because scrapping or scuffling, the clinch is where the fight begins. So,
Yes.
You and I both know that it's all good when you have a puncher's chance, but once you lock up in standing position, somebody's going to go down. Somebody's going to fall down, and then it's going to go grapple.
Oh yeah, this is just the nature of one-on-one combat.
Yeah, so I'm sorry for dominating the conversation, and I'm sorry to blow the whole hour.
it was so much fun to listen to. So much great information. I mean, just so much content that I didn't know existed. You know, I didn't even know Rough and Tumble existed, nor did I know that it was this widespread. You know, saying that you went to other seminars in other states. I thought this was something that your organization was recreating. I didn't realize that it was widespread here in the States.
Yeah, you can do it. You can definitely do it. And I would say that, you know, I look back on my Taekwondo days, and if you're still doing that and you've been doing it that long, I imagine you're pretty terrifying when it comes to those Taekwondo kicks and stuff. My hips are starting to get to where I can barely kick head high anymore. So
I can kick, but I can't gouge an eye out, and that's where Rough and Tumble comes in, buddy. But thank you so much, Mitch. It was so much fun chatting with you.
I'm delighted to have a second conversation, and I'll send you a link to the. I'll send you a link to the video.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care, man.
Hey, take care, man.
Behave yourself.
Have a good day.
All right, you too. Bye now.
You too, buddy. Bye.